Well, good morning, everybody. This is Mike Sheehan. I'm the GIS supervisor for the Planning Department, Prince George's County. This morning, you have asked to be part of or have been assigned to take this training. And what we'll cover this morning is pgatlas.com in depth. Today's date is December 6, 2021, and it is now 9:32 in the morning. So with that, I want to give you an introduction. Nick Ward typically gives this training, but at the moment he's not feeling well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to slide in and start giving this training. Next up I want to do is cover, there are really two versions of pGALIS. Now, if you're a commission employee and you have access to the commission network, you can access a different version of pGALIS. That address is ppd-atlas pGALIS. That will give you an internal version, and there's pros and cons using that version. Everybody else on the outside will be using pgatlas.com. For this class, I'm going to be using the external version. Now, the internal version has benefits because the data is updated more frequently, and we also have a couple extra layers that it just doesn't make sense to share with the public. It's more of an administrative tool. So again, I'll be showing external pGALIS. And the last slide I want to show is the data updates. A lot of questions come up about this, is how frequently do you update the data? For staff using internal pGALIS, the data is updated every evening. That means development activity data, all development cases that is maintained and managed by the planning department is updated every evening. That means the mapping, the data, the shapes, the development records, everything. And on external pGALIS, the data is updated every Monday about 3 p.m. And that's needed in order to prepare for planning board, which is the following Thursday. All other maps, all other GIS maps, if GIS updated it, if we updated property lines, if we updated zoning, if we updated gas stations, you name it. If there was an update, that update shows the following morning. On external pGALIS, that data is updated by the 23rd of the month. For staff, for planning staff on this call, when you're talking to a citizen and using pGALIS, you have to remember these are two different versions. So it's important for you to get onto pgatlas.com so you are discussing the same version of data, because you will have access to more current data and you don't want that disconnect. And that's all I'm going to say about the slides. Next up is, let's go ahead and show pGALIS. Now, pgatlas.com, it started in about the year 2000. It has gone through many different versions. And when you first open the application, you can look at this disclaimer. The disclaimer is basically saying this mapping data is for general purposes. There is some data that's engineering accurate and some data that's not. We get data from all different agencies. We get it from the private sector, we get it from government agencies. We purchase data ourselves and we edit and maintain the data as well. So there's a lot of variety in here. We think it's better to provide you access to all of the information with the caution that the data can be different depending on the quality. So we just have to warn you about that. We often get phone calls that come in and they want to use this data for court cases. That is really not a good idea. Nick, I think somebody has a mic open. Can you close that down, please?
Yep, thanks. I got it.
And so with pGALIS, be careful. You know, we don't want to go to court representing you that you're going to challenge a property line issue using pGALIS. You really need to get a surveyor in there and you need to use the information carefully. Now, pGALIS will work on all major web browsers, all the way from Safari to Chrome to Safari, Chrome, to Edge, to all the major players, the application will work. Over time, certain software like Google will come out with an update. And when the update occurs, occasionally pGALIS will break in certain areas. We're not aware that the change is coming, it just happens. And then we find out, usually through you, the users, telling us something has broken. Then we get in there and try to figure it out. If you run into a problem with one browser, just know you can jump over to Firefox or Chrome and use that web browser because it works the same. And the last thing here I want to bring up is pop-up blocking. Just like many other security applications, pgAtlas is being watched by your web browser. It's trying to determine if the application is a security threat or not. In certain instances, especially when you're trying to export data out, you're trying to do a printout, you'll use pgAtlas and a gray box will come up on the screen and disappear. What's happening is that your web browser thinks pgAtlas is a security threat and will try to block it. So what you need to do is to have your web browser trust pgatlas.com, and for staff, internal pgAtlas has to be also trusted in order for it to work. This doesn't cost anything. It's just a little technical change you have to give to your browser, just like lots of other web applications. So just beware. If you see something kind of pop up and then go away without giving you the information, just know you probably have your pop-up blocking on. And sometimes we can help you with that. A lot of times it's going to need somebody in your office or at home to go in and trust that. And the last thing is login. You do not have to log in to use pgAtlas. A lot of people think they see that and they believe they have to log in. That's not true. You can use over 99% of pgAtlas without ever logging in. So I'm going to use pgAtlas throughout this class without logging in, and near the end, I will log in to show you the difference. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'll click OK, and now you get the map. Notice the red box in the top right corner. When you see this red box, and this one says pgAtlas, click here, it's actually giving you news. It's telling you that something is happening that you need to pay attention to. This last one that popped up was, we just added new 2020 aerial imagery. You can click on it and it will tell you that that change has occurred. So you don't have to discover it by accident. There is information popping up there in the red box. If we have to shut down pgAtlas for training, if we have to shut it down for server updates, anything like that, we'll put a red box up there to give you a warning that it's coming. Now with that, we are ready to begin. So what I'm going to do here is start over here on the left. This is the navigation tools. And then we actually have the menu tools up here in the top right. So for the navigation tools, I'm just going to click on the plus once. It zooms in a certain scale. I click again, it zooms in another scale. Click again. Now the property lines start to appear. Click again, and more detail starts to come up. Can you adjust how much that zoom in changes? No, you can't. It's all predetermined. It's just a quick reference for you to get in there and look at the data. Minus is zoom out, same thing. Pretty straightforward. Now the next one here, this button here, the little arrow, curved arrow, this is like undo, or I want to go back to the previous extent. If I click on that, it will go back to where I was before, where I was before, and where I was before. You can continue to go backwards, but you cannot go forwards. It's just a way to, if you get moving too quickly, you can adjust the map by mistake and you, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. It's exactly where I want to be. You can undo once and you're right where you want it to be. The other option is you can click on this button, and this is zoom to area. I think this is one tool you will use all the time. So if I click on, left click on the zoom to area button, come over to the map, left click and hold, drag down and away, let go. The map will zoom in automatically to the red box that you defined. I can do it again, click, come over to the map, left click, drag down and away, let go, and it zooms into that area. Now you ask yourself, oh, I didn't want to do that. I want to go back one. I can go back to the undo button, and the undo button. That's how those tools work. If you go into, you're so close that you're like, I don't know where I am anymore. I just want to start over. You can click on the house here. This is full extent, it will bring you back to when you first opened PGALIS. Those are the navigation buttons. I hope that's pretty simple. Now I'm going to roll up to the top right. Next is the layer list. Well, before we do that, let's talk about the property data first. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to zoom into an area for just general information. I want to zoom into this area here and try to explain what we're looking at. Right. Now, these property lines are all maintained by the Planning Department in Prince George's County. Now, it's important to understand how those lines were added. Over time, what we have here is I have this drawing here. This is the original cartography, pen and ink, Mylar, plastic sheet of property boundaries that were drawn in by hand. Now, where did they get that information? They got that from the engineering drawing. You may have seen these before. These are survey accurate engineering drawings that were being handed to draftsmen that fit them in to as best they could using pen and ink and rulers. As PGATLAS started, as everything moved from hand-drawn maps to a digital map, we had to use something to use for the property lines to move forward. So what happened is all of these images were scanned into the computer and somebody went through and drew them digitally, just like I'm doing here. They were not engineering accurate to begin with, therefore they're not engineering accurate in PGATLAS. Now, after that being said, what I like to say is any new plat that was entered after the year 2000 is almost entirely engineering accurate because we have the ability of entering in the actual coordinates that the surveyors used in our GIS software. But that means that we had to fit it in the old cartography pen and ink drawing lines. And that's where the disconnect comes in. You may find a property line going through the middle of a building because the area is a large piece of property that never got developed and there's a farmhouse, lots of reasons. So caution, when you see a property line, don't assume it's engineering accurate. That's a mistake. But if you see a plat, an engineering plat that was drawn after the year 2000, just like this drawing that I showed you before, if this came in after the year 2000, we use these boundary numbers to capture that information really accurately. So it's a mix. You just need to be careful. What are we looking at? So we have property in yellow, road right-of-ways in white. If you see white, that means there is no tax account number, and you have what I would like to say is the government maintains the roads. That is different than over here where you see roads in yellow. Now I just said yellow has tax accounts. That means this road is not owned by maintained by the government, and it has a tax account because this road is privately owned for this development. So you will get privately owned roads with road text, and you'll get public owned road text. You'll see that. Now, the information you're looking at here, these numbers, these are lot, block, and parcel numbers, which are assigned by, it's basically, we're following the tax assessment database. That's the same information that's entered on here. Lot 29, 28, 27. We're just re-entering it as a unique identifier for a property. So you look at lot 5, 6, 7. Oh, I'm going backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Block A. And the other one you want to be interested in is it's a parcel number. Parcel 170, parcel 171. What is the difference? A lot number is in usual terms, a lot number is a subdivided plat, an individual lot. Where a parcel is usually an undeveloped piece of land that may have 1 or 2 structures on it. It could be an entire forest. It varies. Again, all defined by the assessment office. We also have condominium plats, where this entire phase of a condo represents one condominium plat. Now, if we dive into the data and take a look at it, I'm going to come up here to the white circle with the blue eye. I'm going to click on that once, come over to the lot number 5, and click on this once. What do you see? Nothing. Well, what does that mean? Because the information is buried inside of here. If I click on this data, now it gives me the assessment data, the owner, premise address, and tax account for that property. Once from here, I can now expand on this information by clicking on it again. And now I see even more detail. I can scroll down on the left, on the right, and look at, again, almost the complete tax assessment record. We, the planning department, does not maintain this data. We get a copy of this data from the assessment office. All we do is link the tax account number to the shape of the property. Now from there, I want to go ahead and scroll down a little bit, and you see the word tax account has a blue link. If I click on that link, it opens up the live record of the tax assessment property. Why do we do that? Because our data is updated, as you noticed in the beginning of class, it's updated like once a month. That change can happen. SDAT, Tax Assessment Office, can update the data much more frequently. So if you really want to know what is it today, you can look at the assessment record, and usually it's a duplicate of this unless they made a change. Just that it's a convenience for you to look at the current record, not a copy of what we're showing. Block, lot, and parcel number. You notice we said block A, lot 5, it's right there. And the description. And here they have no description. Sometimes there's a lot of information in here. Again, all of this is to help the assessment office give, assign tax bills to a property. We're just leveraging that data and showing it to you. Next is the plat number. If it's a subdivided lot with lots like this one, you'll have a plat. If I come over to plat, it has A18. What does that mean? If I click on that link with my left mouse button, it will open up this live link to the State Archives database. On that plat, you have 2 drawings. So if I click on MSA S1250 from 2005, I click on that one, what happens? It opens up that engineering drawing for that property. You can email this, you could print it out, it's a PDF. All of this is maintained by the state of Maryland State Archives down in Annapolis. Go ahead and exit this. Now, what you're going to notice, if I click on this again, you get this. What happened? There's a security built into this. If you do this once, it won't let you go back and do it a second time because they're worried about someone hacking into their database. So although there were 2 links that I showed you originally, you can only get 1 at a time. Well, what does that mean? That means in order to see the other image, you actually have to close the browser down completely, come back into PGAtlas, zoom into this area, and do everything over again just to see the second image. It's again, a security enhancement. They had a real problem with people outside the country, and this is the best we can do, linking it directly to PGAtlas. Next up is subdivision name. Now you would think subdivision name would be Beech Tree, it would be Perrywood, a subdivision that we're familiar with in Prince George's County. In reality, in the assessment world, the word subdivision is really the plat name. So in other words, this plat, the plat name is Cross Creek Club. That is what they're calling a subdivision name. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes the plat will have Central Park Phase 4. Well, that's not really a subdivision name, that's a plat name. Well, that's the reality, is that really is not a subdivision name as you and I would know it. It is a plat name. Next up is acreage. Acreage assigned by the assessment office for that property. They considered this area 0.1610 acres. Next up is the owner information. Who receives the tax bill? And LIBOR, folio, again, all unique identifiers for the property. When was it last sold, the transfer date, the sales price, how much is the land value, and the square footage of the property. All, again, maintained by the assessment office. If I come over here to the right, you see the green S. Because I clicked on this property, because I see this property information, I can now click on this green S and it will call up a street view of that property. Now, this information is purchased by Prince George's County government. It's actually was captured January of this year. And what's nice about it, it is similar to Google Street View, but it's current and we can control it. And you can, pan out, zoom around, look at the different areas in the neighborhood, just like Google Street View, but it's current. And also, we're actually capturing more streets than Google Street View does. We're trying to get into apartment complexes and schools, and we're trying to get into more of the areas for public safety. Next up is Bing, this little link here. If I click on Bing, this is what Bing has in their database for the property. Again, there's a picture of the house. You can zoom in and look at the different data sets that are available in that neighborhood. Next up is the Google link. Same thing. And this one is the pictometry link, another Prince George's County Office of Information Technology application. If I click on this link, this will open up. Is it going to work? Come on, there it is. It's going to open up a bird's eye view of that property. So what I'm doing here is stretching it into place. I can move this down by clicking here. I can expand this. I can now zoom in. And what's nice about this is now I can spin around and look at it from a different orientation. A little slow this morning. And what also is nice about it is you can adjust the date. Let's say you want to see what that property looked like in 2011. So you can see how important this is to public safety. It helps government agencies a lot, understanding what's going on in the property over time. Again, public has access to it at no charge. And what else do I have here? All right, so I've covered all these, I've covered these. Now the question people have is, hey, I want to print this information out. You can click on the PDF link, it will export it to a PDF, which then it'll create a nice little report for you of this data. You can export all of this into a spreadsheet, so you can use it for whatever you need. This button here is the explode window, and what we use this for is sometimes we find users' printers are not always the newest versions, or there's a problem with the PDF software itself not converting. So by using this option, it will put this in a format that will always print to your printer. Problem is it wastes a lot of white space, therefore a lot of paper. It's just another option to give to a customer to make sure they get the information they need. And that will cover the actual assessment data for one record. Now, what I wanted to show you is over here is parcel A. It's a very large parcel. If I click identify here, you notice that there is only one owner. It's TNC Limited Partnership. Again, I click on this, it expands it, all the same tools apply. So in this example, one large area, one tax account, one small area, one tax account. And now I'm going to click on the condominium, and just what you would think, you get lots of owners on that condominium plat. Each individual is listed here. I can click on this record, it will expand it so you can see that information, and you could print it out just like we talked about before. So the reason I'm bringing that up is just know one shape does not mean one tax account and can mean many. Okay, that takes care of the property information. So let's go ahead and roll over to the layer list. So if I click on this map layer icon, you get this information. Automatically, by default, the property lines are displayed, which that's what that represents. They are being displayed. I want to see more information. All right, so here we go. So if we look at development, well, let's talk about zoning first. Our zoning map, if I click on the blue triangle next to the zoning map, it expands and shows you all the different maps that have to be turned on in order for a zoning map to be complete. Now you can do that individually, or you can just check this box and it turns them all on at once. For staff, be careful. A zoning map must have all of this information on. You can start to turn off special exceptions. You can start to turn off different overlays, maybe for printing purposes to meet your own needs, but just know that it is not a zoning map. It is a subset, so be careful. As of April 1st of next year, our proposed zoning will become the official zoning. So this one will become an archived version of zoning, and this will become the active one. So this is the new zoning layer with the new zoning map. Development activity. Wanted to show you this for those that don't know what I'm talking about. Whoops, where'd it go? There we go. You may see these signs driving around Prince George's County. These come from the planning department. They represent development cases that are being discussed on a property. And this example is DSP 02024-06. You're driving by, you don't know what it means. I'm supposed to call this number and find out what's going on. You can, and we will provide you that information. If you know the case number, like this number here, you can go to PG Atlas and find that information by turning this on. These are all the developments that are occurring in Prince George's County. And what we're showing here are the maps of development that occurred after the year 2000. So if I were to, I'm interested in this property here. What's going on here? I click on the white circle with the blue eye. I come over to the shape. I click here. It's extracting out the information. There's a detailed site plan right here. There's the full record of the detailed site plan. And all of this is maintained by the planning department. There is a NRI on that property as well. The full record of that NRI is here. Again, lots of information for you to get used to. And back to the property data, which we talked about before. Next up is imagery. If I click on the blue arrow and open up imagery, you'll see we have an extensive, oops, sorry, that's latest imagery, supplemental imagery. You'll see we have an extensive imagery data set that goes all the way back to a long time ago. So if you were interested in seeing what that property looked like in the year 2000, I could click here and you'll see that in year 2000, there was nothing happening on that property. But if I come up here, has development started? No, still undeveloped. So you could pick the area of interest, these numbers for general reference. If you're used to DPI or pixels with your camera, in the inch world, the smaller the number, the sharper the photo. So a 9-inch imagery, what I like to say is 9-inch, you'll be able to tell that it's a vehicle, it's blue, but a 3-inch, you'll be able to tell it's a pickup truck and it's blue. It's that much sharper. You also get 1 foot. These are very coarse data sets. Again, still useful, but they're just not super clear like this one. We get that data from many different sources. So if I come back up to here, I come down to administrative. If I expand this list, I see buildings. I can turn on my building shapes. I can turn on my address point layer. It tells you the address. This is 6900 on that property. Lots of different data sets for you to explore. Popular ones people like to use is councilmanic districts, municipal boundaries are here. What else? Public lands, different grids, zip codes. Again, you'll get used to each one of these. One of the questions people will ask is, well, what does that mean? What is a opportunity zone? If I click on the question mark next to each layer, it will open up a definition. This is what we call our metadata or our data dictionary. This tells us where the data came from, who maintains it, when it was last updated, and what does it represent. Easement layer. I can turn on these easement layers here. Let me back out. There we go. So what does an environmental and cultural platted easement represent? Question mark. There's the information. In general terms, if it says platted, this is information that we found on an engineering plat, and we captured it and coded it to be transportation circulation, environmental and cultural. We captured that information. Now, people are going to ask, well, what is all these colors? You can click on the white circle blue eye and get that it is a environmental cultural, but what does the tree mean? You know, you have to click on it. That's one thing people miss. So if you come up here, right here, there's this icon. If I click on that icon, it will actually give you the legend for the map. So you can see the tree in the green area is a conservation environmental cultural easement. If I come down to environmental, now we're looking at impervious surface. We have soil data. We have steep and severe slopes. Slope, what does that mean? If I click here, it's light pink is 15% to 25% grade, and over above 25% is where it's a great place to go sliding with your kids. And again, lots of different floodplain data sets are in here. Elevation data, contours. You want to know where the elevations are? You can see there's a 140 designation here. I can click on the white circle blue eye. I can click on that line, and it tells me that's 142 feet. Let's see, I'm going to skip that. Oops, one elevation historic. Okay, so these are historic data sets that are maintained by the planning department, by our historic preservation staff. If you're interested in knowing where the historic districts are, historic sites, I can click here, zoom out, find out where I can find one. And there's one right there. So these red outlines are representing historic site environmental settings. What does that mean? Click on the question mark. Now down to park properties. This is data maintained by Prince George's County Parks Department. They maintain the data, they share it with us, and we put it up there for everyone to see. So if you want to know where community centers are, There's a community center right there. I can click on the white circle, blue eye, click on the greenhouse. Oops, missed it. Try again. There we go. Community center, and that is Cedar Heights. Next up, point of interest. So I'm going to zoom out to an area of the county. So you're interested in knowing where the fire stations are, or maybe the libraries, police stations, and so forth. All of that is, again, most of this data is maintained by the planning department. We do use different sources to get this information, and each one has a different update cycle. Next is transportation. If you're interested in seeing the paved surfaces, now we're showing paved areas. So why is one darker and one's lighter? What does that mean? I can click on the legend, and the legend tells me it's a parking lot. So the light gray is parking lot, the dark are roads. If I turn on the aerial imagery, you would see that that is correct. When was the last time that was updated? Right there, 2020. We also capture sidewalks, bridges. There's, again, on the Beltway, we have some bridges here. And I'll skip over those. So then we'll come down to sewer and water category. If I expand these, all of these are maintained outside of the planning department. The Department of Environment, DOE, maintains these sewer and water category layers, and we receive this data from WSSC. What this allows you to do is the sewer envelope will tell you, for example, let's see if I go to my legend, that'll help me. There we go. So for that green area, there's a planned or existing sewer system, or if it's red, there isn't one. I believe that means the red area are sewer, septic tanks. I have to zoom out far enough. There we go. So down here that we're on septic, and in here we're on city sewer. Again, the purpose of the property data is to capture the physical boundary of the property and to assign a tax account to each record. So as we pointed out earlier, if I come up to the white circle and blue eye, I could click on this shape here. It tells me that there are 3 tax accounts. Each one has a tax record. I can open up this one. It will give me that it's 0.16 acres. I hear a mic. Oops. Okay. I could click on this record. It tells me that it is 0.0560 acres, and so forth. So when you're looking at this property and you say, what are the tax accounts in this property? If you only located the one tax account, it wouldn't be for the whole property. What does that mean? It means the property represents the legal boundary, but not the subset of that shape. In other words, this property is divided into thirds. Each one has a different area. So when you're looking at a shape, you have to ask yourself, is that one property tax account for the whole shape, or are there many? And another example of that is over here. If I were to show you these individual lots, a long time ago, they used to sell these lots. A lot of people refer to them as cigarette lots. And you could buy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and they were all set up that way. So if I clicked on this and said, give me this record, it would tell me that the Washington the Metro owns that record. Well, what is that record? That record is 2 acres. Well, wait a minute. That is not 2 acres. There can't be. That's, that's 1/8 of an acre at most. So how can this be 2 acres? Because if you look at the description, it says lots 1 through 44. What does that mean? That means that same tax account number is assigned to each one of these all the way up to lot 44, which I believe, which way does it go? Right here. So all of these are owned by the Metro system, but it only has one tax bill. So it's confusing. You have to look at this data and understand the description. Sometimes it says it owns 10 feet into lot 5. But the boundary is the legal boundary, as you saw in the engineering plat, but the ownership can be divided into fourths, thirds, halves, and so forth. So it's important to remember tax bill, one record, always one record, but how many shapes is that record assigned to? And then over here, this shape, if I click on here, you'll see this one comes up as unknown. What does that mean? That means we as a planning department don't have enough information to assign the tax account to that property. We have over 1,000 tax accounts that are active that we cannot figure out how to link it to a shape right now. There's just not enough detail in the assessment record to have us be comfortable assigning that record. So when you see tax account 99999, 99998, they all are unknown records. And so if you as the user have data that would help us fix it, please send it. That would be very helpful. All right, now that I covered that, just to give you a, whoops, come on, zoom in. I think it's important to see how this really works with an aerial imagery. If I turn on the imagery, you'll see all of those shapes is like one business development. When the engineering drawing was approved, it had these individual lots. But when development occurred, they bought all of them and built a building on it. So without the imagery, you would think this is residential lots, but in reality, it's not. So if I turn on the address point, you'll see there's one address here for this building, 5004, 5012, and so forth. So the imagery will help clarify some of that. Okay, and the other tool I wanted to highlight is if I have zoning turned on, and then I turn on imagery, you can't see both, right? You have one or the other. So I can turn off and on. You do have the option of doing a transparency. So over here on the right, if I click on this slider and bring it in, you will see that it will transition in and out, and you can print it this way. It just depends what you want to do. And the other topic that comes up a lot is people, how do I turn off the property lines? Now, by default, something must be on all the time in PGALIS. So it's deceiving to say, if I turn this off, it turns property lines off. It doesn't, and that's true. And we did that on purpose because something must always be drawn. So we leave it checked, although it doesn't really do anything, but you can hide it by using the transparency tool. You can just bring this in and turn on zoning without it. And now you can bring the property lines back in. Just a little workaround. Okay. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go into search. We've done a lot of drawing of maps. We've been panning and zooming. Now we're going to do some searching. So by default, when I click on the magnification glass and these 6 dots, I click over here, it defaults by search on an address. If you don't have an address, go ahead and type one in. I'm going to grab this one, type that in, and notice it pops up. All right, what does that mean? When you see it pop up, let me back up a little. I type in 1600 and it's like, I don't know which 1600 you want. But as soon as I start typing FedEx Way, there is only one, which is good. It's a good sign that the computer is going to find it. If I click on that, click on search, it will zoom into basically FedEx Field. This is the record for FedEx Field. So I can now say, okay, there's the address. What is the information for that property? I have that record. Oops, what did I do wrong? Huh. Well, there's a live demo for you. Something just went wrong on that one. Try this one. Okay, that's not happy. Let me go ahead and reload this. So back to search, an address. Now the computer is smart enough to know, to locate different ways you spell an address. There is the address point layer address, and that's this layer here, address point. This one's maintained by planning staff. Going the wrong way. Come on. There is the address that is embedded in the property shape, which has a premise address for the tax record, premise address. So this address is different than this point address. And there's a third one, which is the one that public safety also uses. So what does this mean to you? It gives you more flexibility because we have multiple different address data sets. All you need to know is spell the address correctly, right? Now, where it does get challenging is Crane Highway. Is it Robert Crane Highway? Is it Crane Highway? Is it 301? Is it 301 North? These different address data sets handle that differently, and it can be problematic. So what I like to do is try to find something close by, like the intersection, and find that street. So in this example, I can type in, let's see. All right, I'll do Beechwood. All right, here's Beechwood. If I click on Beechwood, do a search, it will bring me to Beechwood. And I know where Beechwood is because I can zoom out and find the major intersection of where I can't locate that address. So for some reason you couldn't find Fordham Place, it wouldn't find it because maybe you spelled Fordham wrong. But you can find the other street. It'll get you in the neighborhood, allows you to move around and find it. It just makes it easier for you. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that off. Next up is the search on a plat number. So every engineering drawing has a plat number. I can now grab a plat number. I'm going to use this example, type it in, do a search, and it will bring up all of the different lots within that plat. State of Maryland owns it. Now we have Robert Scott owns a part of it. These are all the property owners within this plat. I can print it out as a PDF. I can put it in Excel and so forth. The other option is subdivision name. We talked about that earlier. It's really not a subdivision name. It is a plat name. So if I do, let's see here. Here's a great 4900 Beach Place condo. Well, that is not a subdivision name. That is a plat name. That's where it starts to jump out at you that the way the assessment office uses that is really a plat name. But it does help you get close. So if you see something like Beechwood or Beech Tree, I said, well, I can zoom in on that one. Let's see where that is. There it is. Very large area. Tax account. If you know the tax account of the property, you can search on it. That's the county administration building. And you can search on an owner's name. Now, property owner's name. If the person's getting a tax bill, you should be able to search on their name. The problem is that if you use a name that has many Smith family or the Jones family,
you will have a hard time deciphering which record it is. So if I start typing Smith, you notice it's only going to show you 10 records, let's say. You don't know if it's this Lisa Smith or is it this Smith. Sometimes they just use initials. It's whatever the assessment office uses to put that last name. But if you use something more unique, you might be able to find that record and zoom to it. Keyword here is property owner. If you're a renter, you don't get a tax bill. Therefore, there is no way to locate where you're at. And the other piece of information I wanted to show you is economic development. Now, this is an interesting one. A lot of developers like using this tool. So I'm going to give you a quick example. I want to find a property that is an improvement value of $10 to $15, let's say. And I want it to be within the city of Bowie. And I want it to be a zoning of commercial. And I can say select. Now I can say, okay, no results. All right, not big enough. All right, so let's say 100,000. Oops. We got enough zeros there. 1, 2, 3, yeah, there we go. Search. Now I've got records. I have up over 50 records. There's 161 records if you look at the bottom of the screen that I can potentially find within the city of Bowie that has an improvement value up to $100,000. You can do acreage, you can do year built, you can do when it was last sold, and so forth. So how does this work? Just like before. If I want to see this property, I can click on the zoom. It will zoom into that property and say there's one record. If I click onto that property, there's another record. And so forth. So I bet you these are all condos. Nope, there's one right there, another condo. So this information allows you to locate properties specifically based on a query using the assessment record. One fault to this is that if you get too many records, you'll get a big red box pop up and say, hey, there's over 500 records, I think it is, or 550. You have to refine your search, because if you allowed all of those records to come across the internet, it would cause a problem for the application. So you just refine your search. You can say up to 10 acres, or you want to say within a certain zip code and so forth. Again, just another way to help you use the data, use the data that exists. Another option, if I scroll back up, is proximity tool. So what I can do here is I can say I want to see everything within a certain proximity based on this radius. So I have a half a mile radius, and I said from here, let's see, oh, too many records. I have 200 records, all properties within 200 records within a half a mile. So I've clicked that shape. It says here are all the properties. What do you want to do with the information? You can zoom in on one and continue. What else do I have in here? Street intersection. That's if you happen to know the actual intersection between two streets. And what this will do is zoom in on that area, put a point on the map, and say, here's the intersection of Elm and Main Street. All right. So I'm going to move off of that. I'm going to move to development activity. So now if you know where the case is, again, back to that sign we talked about earlier, if you happen to know where that sign is, I can enter that case number into here, do a search. It will zoom in on that property, show you where it's located, tell you everything about the record, when it was approved, is it gone to planning board, history, here's planning board resolutions about that case is all linked to it. The staff report for that case is on here as well. What did staff say about that property? All of that is starting to link together into one graphic image of information. All right.
Now you notice all of this data below here. You have the case number, reviewer, type. You can actually do a search on that as well. So if you were looking for an applicant that had a council district, you can actually get into refining that even closer. So you can say, give me everything within Council District 2, give me everything, and you'll be able to dig out that information. Now, the difference between the white circle and blue eye and the black circle with white eye, they're identical. They just the users wanted to have that right here because they were searching. They didn't want to come out, come to here and come back in. So we just added it twice, really the same thing. And the other tool here is the drawing tool. So if I can do a freehand polygon, tell me I'm drawing a shape. I want to know all the people that live here. There is all the tax records for those properties. I can now save that as a PDF. I can export it as Excel and do whatever you need to do with that data. You can even refine it closer by saying I want a polygon. So I can click, drag, click, drag, click, drag, and double click. And that will say, if I touched it, I want to know those property records. And there they are. All right, now let's roll into, we'll finish that. We finished that. There's a lot more hidden in here I'm not going to cover today. This is more advanced, so if you're interested, you can always contact us and we'll walk you through that. And now we're up to the actual tools. So we have the hammer and wrench icon, then we'll bring up these tools. What do these do? So you have a measuring tool by default. It's set to area. You can measure distance as well. So let's start with area. I want feet, I want acres, what do you want? All right, I want area, I want acres. All right, how many acres is this? Come on. This is 34.36 acres based on what I drew. Would you submit this as a legal record? No. Again, property lines are a cartoon in certain areas. You don't want to do that. Is it very close? Yeah, it's pretty close. You can do the same for distance. I want feet, I want yards. I can click here and it will actually start totaling that up for you. So 934.33 yards, each segment is measured, and you have all that information as well. You can grab this here, copy and paste that into a document if you need to, and that's how the measuring tool works. Placement tool, this is the coordinate tool. So if you're a sailor or a geocacher out there, you can click on the area and say, what is the latitude, longitude of this place? It writes it on the map. It puts it right here as well. I could put that in degree, minutes, seconds. I can do this. I can change that to Maryland State Plain feet and put it there. Just another way to reference the data. Now, as we did this, we kept adding a lot of information to the map that you see all the previous work that we've done. And eventually someone's going to say, how do I get rid of this? This is the eraser tool. Now you can erase individual segments, the coordinates that we just added. You may want to undo that one, undo that one. You may want to redo it, or you may want to erase them all. There's the measuring tool that we actually put in. So we want to erase all those. And now we have selected elements when we grabbed all those properties. You can erase all, or you could just erase everything. That's how the eraser tool works. Next up, zoning. Let's do this. So I have a zoning map on the screen. I now want to print this map. So I'm going to click on the print option. Here you can give the map title. You don't have to enter a map title. I'll just say Project 1. Resolution, low, medium, high. For general mapping use, I've used low all the time. If you're into graphic design and you want to do some fancy editing, then you can go to medium or high. It's just higher dots per inch. It takes longer to generate, so pros and cons. If you're just doing email or PowerPoint, low is just fine. Next option is what paper size. We go all the way up to the large plotter formats. So if you have a plotter in your office or at home, you can print to it, or you can go down to, what is it now, FedEx printing, and you can go down there and print that as well. Next option is, do you want to see that legend that we talked about before? Do you want to see this on the map? That's more of a yes or no. Yes or no. Next up, PDF. Do you want this as a PDF document, or do you want it as an image that will save to your hard drive and you can just paste that into Word or PowerPoint? Just a choice to make. Click print, it will perform that and save it to your hard drive. Another option is the drawing tool. Here you have, this is a very crude drawing tool. It's a long way from Illustrator, but it does allow you to add information to the map. So if I wanted to make a point and I wanted it to be bright red, so what I do is I click on this, get it up to bright red. If I want a little darker, I can go like this, get it to where I want it. I want a point. I want my style to be a square, and I want to put a square right there. Maybe I want to do some text, and I'm going to say project 1. Do I want sans serif or plain text? How big do I want it? You'll get used to these numbers, and I want black text. And I just click here, project 1. I don't like where that is. How do I erase it? Again, back to eraser tool, drawing, erase, come back to your drawing tool, project 1. How about here? That looks better. I'll do that. Another option, freehand polygon. I want the outline to be red. I want the interior to be blue, all right, purple. And I want it to be somewhat transparent. So I'm going to make it about there. Now I can come over here, do this. And now I have a line weight of 1. I can make it thicker. I can make it dash lines. And the fill is a very light purple. And now you can print this information out. All right. So now that we've added this, what typically will happen is you end up producing a map for a specific need, and you go home for the day. And the next day, your boss calls you and says, hey, can you make me another copy? And you've done all of this online, and you closed your computer down when you left. So there is no way to go back. You're going to have to recreate the map and print 2 out next time. Well, there is one way, and that's that login option that we talked about earlier. If you log in, you could save what map you have drawn. You can save what drawing and graphics you've added, and save that under your profile to be called up at any time in the future. How does that work? Well, here's the login button. So if I click here, it's going to say, hey, what's my login? If you haven't registered, you click here. Now, word of warning, if you're on internal Atlas staff and you go to log in, you must be on internal Atlas to get access to your saved maps. If you're outside using pgatlas.com, same thing. They don't intertwine. They are separate. You just have to keep that straight. So if you wanted to register, you click here, register. What will happen is you will get an email in usually your junk folder saying someone's trying to create a profile under your email address. Do you accept? You say yes, and you're in. But I already created one, so I'm going to type, if I remember it, let's see. Good, I remembered it. All right, so now what's happened is I have a new icon has popped up that I am logged in. Now I want to save this map. So if I come up here and say save map, it says, oh, you want to save it? Okay, what do you want to call this? I'm just going to call this new project 1. All right, and I'm going to say save. All right, now it's saved. It's in the system. I can come up here and say load maps. Here are all the maps I've saved in the past. New project 1, here's a topo map that I created. I can come up here to load map, go back to project 1, new project 1. There's new project 1. So it's saved under your profile based on the login information you did. You do not need to log in. We've done everything to this point, and that's a real concern for certain people. They don't want to be providing all that personal information. Totally understand. But for this, if you want to be able to save it, we can't just have it out there for anybody to delete it. Therefore, we ask you to create a profile so you can save it under your name. Totally up to you. The other option I really like about this is the share option. If I click on share, you get this web address. If I grab that web address, come up to a new browser, paste that in, I can put that in an email, send it to my boss, and what this will do is it will zoom in on project 1. It's all saved. It's there. They'll be able to use it. Even though they don't know how to use PG Atlas, they'll be able to see it at least. And if they do know how to use it, now they can start using the tools and off they go. So it's really helpful in that aspect. And we're getting close to the end here. Let's see, we've done that, we've done that. All right, I'll get out of tools. Let's see, this is my profile, that's my log out, and now we're into helps. Okay, so this is all the, again, when that red box popped up in the morning, this is another way to get to the news. Here you have the email address. So if you have a question, it's better to email it to this address because that email will be sent to many people. And that way, if one person's on leave, we'll still be able to get to your answer. Really want to emphasize this application is for you. In my shop, we technically don't use this application. We have a much more powerful one, but this one is really, again, for our business processes, for different work programs. And if it's broken, you got to let us know because what I find sometimes is, oh, someone must have already said it. No, if it's broken, you got to let us know. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, the quicker you tell us, the faster we can get it fixed. Different links, again, self-explanatory. If you want to get into more details about the data itself and the organization, that's there. These are in the existing help files. So if you wanted to relive this, you could click on this video tutorial. And it was basically me talking about how to turn layers on and off back in the day. So this is probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. And now we're down to, and that's my admin login. So that is it for PG Atlas. I think I've covered everything. The only, if you need to leave, it's a good time to go. What I wanted to cover is if people are still willing to stay on, I wanted to talk about these icons here, because this is what we've talked about this morning is advanced PG Atlas. That's what we've used all morning long is advanced. But there are other subset tools that are built into PG Atlas and other web map applications that are useful to staff. So I'm going to cover that. If you need to go, great. I thank you for attending. Always send us your feedback. And with that, I'll keep going. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reload this page. And I'm going to say find a property. Again, advanced mapping is what you always get when you first start. So if I go find a property, what do? You just type in an address. I don't know how to use PG Atlas. This is one way to be able to get to that information. That's it. You don't really have a lot of other options here. It's very restrictive because we're trying to keep it simple. Planning board. If you want to know what cases will be discussed at planning board, you can come here. There are 3 cases on the agenda for the 9th, which is this Thursday. If you want to see what this one's about, you can click here. It will zoom into that shape. It talks about the development record and so forth. Oh, I should say. And you can look into the future as well. So if you want to see what was on the 16th, this will bring up the shapes that are happening on the 16th and so forth. All right, development activities. If you have a case number that we've talked about before, just like we did, you can click on this and zoom right to the shape. Economic development, I kind of showed this earlier, where you can type in an improvement value or year built, and it will start listing the records. It's just outside of PGALIS, so you don't have all the additional tools on there. Environmental information. If you want to know where Tree Conservation Plan 2 is, you can click here. There they are. I can zoom in here, and there's a Tree Conservation Plan 2. What we find is a lot of realtors use this website so that they are required, I think, required by law to notify the buyer of the property that a tree conservation plan exists on that property. Therefore, if they're selling this one, they can go and search on the address and say you're clear. But if you're building, you want to build a big garage or a swimming pool or something on this property, there may be restrictions, and that's the purpose of this application. Government boundaries is a real simple data set where I can do 100 Main Street. I can click here, and what this will do is zoom in on 100 Main Street. I now know the mayor of Laurel, that's their property. There is no planning area, the council members, the election districts, and so forth. And basically what school my kids will be going to. So another way to get more information. And I will let you know about this one is development activity. If you're interested in receiving an email once a week of any new development case that the planning department has received, you would create the profile and you would select the zip codes you would like that information for. What will I get? Here's an example of what you will get. You'll get this email sent to you. And this is a summary of that development data you saw earlier. And it will tell you that in this example, there's a daycare center discussion. Where is it located, zip code, and I can click here and it will open up PGALIS and zoom to it. All you need to do is, I'll back up. You just go into here and fill out the information. The address extract tool. If you want to grab addresses for a location, I can type in 100 Main Street. I can zoom out on that. Here's 100 Main Street. All right, now what do I want to do? I want all addresses within a quarter mile, 1 mile of that property. All right, I'll click here. Now I've got all those properties. All right, do I want the property address or do I want the owner's address? I'm going to say owner's address. Do I want Excel or a PDF? Well, if I do Excel, you know what that is. It's a PDF that this is a Avery mailing label. So you're choosing which one to pick. I prefer the 2-column because last names can be quite long. And this tends to cover most people and make sure the name fits on the label best. But you can use either. Once you've chosen this, you type in your email address and you can enter a subject line like, I don't know, Brenda's address extract requests. You'll get an email with Brenda's address request in the subject line. You will get a PDF of this information sent to your email, and that's how it works. Next up is this ArcGIS Align application. Now this is another class, okay? So what I'm going to leave you with is let you look at these. I'm just going to buzz through 4 or 5 of them. And what we call these are miniature PG Atlas. They're like a little pinprick of information to help you understand. So right now, with the zoning discussion going on about the new approved zoning, people are interested in knowing what is going on with my property. In the past, it was R80, but in the future, it's going to be RS95. And I can click on here. It will give me information about it. I can click on here and go more and more and more information. If I come down to this one, these are all the 3-dimensional projects, 3D models that we're building for the planning department. These help support work programs. So for this example, we have, this one was fairly new, June of 2021. I can hit play and you'll see how this proposed development, New Carrollton Town Center, what it would look like, where it's located, and view some specific information here. All of this is outside of PG Atlas. I can come over here. I can now zoom in to, maybe you want to see FEMA floodplains alone. You type in an address, you zoom in, and now you can see if a floodplain exists on that property. There's a floodplain right there. One more brand new app that well, let me go ahead and cover this one. New construction. If you want to know where new construction development is occurring in the county, this shows you a heat map of where the concentration is occurring. I can zoom in on this area and it'll show you where that development is occurring. Here's the legend. These circles are residentials. In 2021, there's one that was done in 2021 right here. It's red. I can click on it and it tells me the tax assessment information. And now I can click on this little arrow and it will actually show me the new construction data. And lastly, we'll go up to a new application we released, is the permit application. Through cooperation with the Department of Permits and Inspection, we have access to their data and we're able to now map the location of permits. So you're looking at permit data going back to 2013 to today. The data is updated quarterly. It's showing you where concentration of permits are occurring through that time period. If I zoom in on this area again, shows you the concentration. What are they? Over here on the right, residential use and occupancy or no use and occupancy. All the data, all of the permit data comes from permits. The mapping data is produced by the planning department. So I can click on that dot. It tells me the permit record. And I'm hearing a lot of good news about this one. So I think people find it very helpful. That is it for me. I've taken up all the time I can, and I appreciate all of you for coming. Please send us your feedback. The applications only get better with your input, and thank you again.